Warning: the podcast you are about to listen to discusses films on the basis of the craft of screenwriting. It contains spoilers. Films discussed may also contain offensive content.
In this episode, we will be discussing Don't Look Up, released in 2021, and Titan AE, released in 2000. And welcome back to the Jay and Dave Went to Film School podcast. This is episode 13.
Lucky number 13.
Or isn't 13 unlucky?
I don't believe in that superstition, so it's just as lucky as any other number to me.
Really? Okay. Because, yeah, there's actually, like, a really weird thing where, like, a lot of buildings over in Asia actually remove the 13th floor on their elevators because they really do deem it as a very unlucky number.
That's not just in Asia. That's here, too.
Really?
Yeah. If you go to pretty much any large hotel that has more than that many floors, there's no floor 13.
And you don't believe in the weirdness of the number 13?
No, I haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe that has any supernatural quality. I don't believe God has given it any supernatural quality. There's lots of, false positives that can come up, though, in life. So I don't doubt that people believe it and have had some experiences.
Oh, I mean, you might not know. All the different buildings have fallen down because they just put the 13th floor in.
You could look into that and do your own research and find out which buildings have had the worst catastrophes and whether they had a 13th floor or not.
Well, not to sideline us too hard, but I'm glad you aren't too concerned about this episode being too bad, because it is the sci-fi episode, long awaited, and your favorite genre as well.
That's right. We are looking for themes to center our episodes around, and we've got tons of different possible themes, but we got to go through them one by one. So why not sci-fi?
Yeah, why not sci-fi? Why is sci-fi your favorite genre, by the way, Jason?
I think it's the way it stimulates my imagination. I've always been both someone who loves the natural world and how it works and the underlying laws that govern it, and just the immensity of space, the immensity of the stars in the universe and the galaxies. It's just mind-boggling, and humanity has only gotten more mind-blowing pictures and data from the universe as we've studied, and our telescopes have gotten better, and it just keeps getting more mind-blowing. And so then, as a lot of people wouldn't like sci-fi. They'd say, oh, this is lame, it's too geeky or whatever. But I mean, the industry doesn't lie. There's a huge market for sci-fi. It's got stories that resonate. You can still, within this context, you can have amazing stories that resonate. Yeah,
no, I totally agree, because, like, sci-fi is definitely one of the cooler genres in my mind, because it's unique in that there are certain elements in sci-fi that have become real in real life. Because, like, I know automatic sliding doors in Star Trek are something that people didn't think would exist, but now we just had them in every single building. Cell phones, the internet, computers, robots, AI. These are all, like, elements that we've just put into things to be like, in 100,000 years in the future, like the year 3050 AD, we'll have, flying cars, but now we are developing them today.
Yeah, and 3,000 years after that, we'll actually have jetpacks.
Do we have jetpacks now? I swear we must have.
Jetpacks is kind of the one that people are complain a lot about, because you'd think by now, even 20 years ago, people were saying we should have jetpacks by now, but even the ones that exist now are kind of clunky and not very scalable to mass market.
That's the one thing that I don't really believe when I watch, like, sci-fi films. It's like, you have these megalopolis, whatever word it is. There's a megatropolis or something like that, of these massive skyscrapers and dense urban jungles, and, like, these very straight lines of flying cars going to and fro. Like, even Star Wars, we have, like, people just flying around in spaceships going here and there. Just imagine for like right now the average driver on the road right now, and now they're flying without any roads or whatever. I just don't think it's physically possible.
It's terrifying to think of flying cars from that perspective of how good people drive, and then now make that in the air, where a fender bender is all of a sudden certain death. When you think about it literally, though, you see how they're already working on self-driving cars. And I think that when we scale to flying cars, as you know, the technology is there for that to be. We're on the edge of that being scalable. I've seen several startups now with flying cars that are quadcopter based or with 6 blades instead of 4 or 8, and they're very flyable and stable. But for it to become scaled for actual traffic, I think there would need to be an automated system where they all network and the computer, there's like a computer that guides all flying cars in the area to coordinate them. And that's also realistic. I could see that. That's how you could get those flying highways, up out in Coruscant and have them be orderly and safe.
Yeah, because like you say that, and actually the technology does exist. As a big Disney fan, strange enough, Disney is at a really big forefront when it comes to technology like that because they implement lots of different new technology in their parks. So right now, a lot of the newer rides actually run on a trackless based system. So rides like I think Mystic Manor over in Shanghai and the new Ratatouille ride over in Paris and Epcot, they all run trackless. And so it's a big hub terminal. Yeah, they have sprawling different sets. You can have like 3 different experiences depending on which track you end up on. But yeah, those systems run pretty much perfect all day. And funnily enough, the only times those rides ever go down is because of rider error. It's like some guy drops his hat on the floor, the system shuts down because of a safety issue. Some guy can't, get into the ride vehicle fast enough. We have to shut that down. But yeah, no, they're reliable. From what I understand, they're pretty safe as well, as opposed to track systems as well, which kind of like run on motors. Like once it goes, it's up to an operator to physically stop the machine instead of the machine doing it. I even heard right now that Universal Studios is working with Boston Dynamics to have some new animatronics actually walk around for their new How to Train the Dragons land. So you can actually pet like a baby Toothless that's using the robot skeleton of a Boston Dynamics dog to do all that. If you're a big tech nerd, I definitely suggest going over to Disney because they just have the money to experiment with all this new tech.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Wherever there's a lot of money, that tends to be where development happens in these tech spaces.
That's what I like. If I did like win the lottery and had like exuberant amounts of money, but I wouldn't be putting it to mega mansions and Lamborghinis. I would love to just test things, like just have the disposable income to have a rocket blow up in space and be like, well, we tried that, but we learned something in the process, Which is why I can respect Elon Musk and people like that for that sense of like just having the money to go and try something new.
We wouldn't have the airplane if Orville and Wilbur didn't try that ridiculous idea.
Yeah, we wouldn't have the airplane if Wilbur and Orville didn't try that idea, and then you had all these different investors take the idea and just make it into what it is today. It's really this weird synergy between curious minds and corporate ingenuity and power and money.
Yep. And a lot of problems go along with that, without a doubt, but there is still the necessity of having ongoing research and development in technology for the good that it does. And we try to keep minimizing the evils.
Yeah, which is a huge theme in sci-fi, isn't it? Both reliance on technology being a forefront for human progress and just the comfort of living, as well as the evils through just exploiting it as well.
Yeah, I mean, that theme comes back in pretty much every genre, certainly in sci-fi as well. Good versus evil, kind of all multiple fronts. I mean, you look at the most famous sci-fi, arguably the most famous, Star Wars. Good versus evil. They're not so much the like good versus evil of technology in itself, because both sides use technology, but it opens up the good versus evil in general.
I mean, if you really looked at it, I think the Sith, or I guess at this point the Separatists, were using technology more with the droids, and then the Jedi started using clones, which was a big technology as well.
I guess you could look at it like that. They certainly both used technology in that they had ships. They had, light speed jumping ships, progressed or expanded through the galaxy with those fleets. I mean, I guess that was the, I shouldn't say both did that. That was the state of the civilization at the time. Had those fleets that existed. Out of that came the eventual turn of the empire into something evil. The resistance had to make use of whatever they had to combat that, and that also happened to include technology.
Actually, before we start talking about our movies, I actually was curious because sci-fi is one of those genres as well that are often compared to fantasy. And there always seems to be like a really big conflict between fans of both. Like, fantasy fans don't like sci-fi fans, and sci-fi fans don't like fantasy fans. But there is like a huge overlap between the two, where sci-fi uses technology for the betterment, fantasy often uses magic, and there always is like big battles between either resistances or empires or big kingdoms fighting against each other. I just kind of want to know what your opinion is of just fantasy and sci-fi existing.
Good question. I am someone who loves both genres, and I think that's because they both stimulate my imagination. They're both kind of a playground for thinking outside regular everyday life, for unique, different frame for life to exist in. With science fiction, it's one that is a new frame, but it's grounded because we all know what science is and the developments that have already happened, and we can always see over the horizon, right, at what might be coming next, and then we tell stories about that. And with fantasy, it's not as grounded in that, but it's grounded in the sense that there's a lot we don't understand about the world, or that people look at the world and go, there's got to be more going on. The invisible forces of the world that we interact with, that becomes a new thing to imagine, and what else could be done in that kind of context, and what kind of stories could we tell where there's new forms of invisible forces and things like that. So they're in a sense they're kind of the same, but of course there's a lot of stylistic similarities within fantasy that are different than the stylistic similarities within science fiction. But I'm a fan of them both. How about you?
I totally agree. I love both genres as well. Just for the fact that, like, again, your imagination is not limited to anything. You could imagine any fantasy world, or you can imagine any sci-fi world to your liking. But regardless of which way you do, I often find that both sci-fi and fantasy are great catalysts, I guess, for embodying a really cool theme that just applies to the current day world and the present that we live in. I love escaping to realms of like fantasy to come back to reality with something new, something inspiring, something nice. I like watching Star Wars for the big ships and the big battles, but knowing that good and evil still triumph, there's a place for love. The small guy can go off and do really cool things. That's pretty good. And Lord of the Rings is the same thing with Bilbo Baggins and Frodo.
Yeah, and they're both, as you say, they're both excellent vehicles for theme. They tend to be genres where theme can take the center stage even a bit more than in other genres.
I'm just personally excited to see more sci-fi and more fantasy films and content coming out in the future. I think right now a lot of the movies are dealing with, I guess, magical realism, action, adventure. And I guess fantasy and sci-fi have that one caveat of being, if you're going to do it live, you're going to have to do a lot of set building. You're going to make a lot of things that don't exist right now into the real world. So it's very, very big budget stuff. But yeah, when it does get executed, those are amazing, amazing props to have on in museums and personal collections. Because yeah, I'd personally love to
You're already
have.
thinking ahead to the
Yeah,
cool
because yeah, there's a
paraphernalia.
really cool museum in Seattle, the Mopop, and they have like the Star Trek uniforms. They have Daleks from Star Trek, and that was just really cool to see. That's the one thing I don't really get with animation is just having physical things people have made and just like having that forever. So that's really cool. Anyways, talking about those technology and I guess the exploitation of billionaires, I did recommend you for the first time a live action film to watch. We did a little bit of switch around.
That's right. We are doing a reverse share this episode. First time ever on Jay and Dave Went to Film School podcast. I recommended the animation film, and David recommended the live action.
I recommended you a movie called Don't Look Up, which is currently on Netflix, and it was a movie that caught me right away. I don't normally watch a lot of live action, but this was a movie that really got me with its cast. It really got me with its little excerpt of being a movie about a bunch of scientists that are kind of just ignored by the general public. When I watched it, it was really, really cool. It was awesome, and it was funny. It was the first sci-fi movie I wanted to recommend to Jason when he asked me for a live action recommendation.
Yeah, well, should we go into that one right away?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, how did you like it, dude?
Well, I was not as impressed in the sense that I am sensitive to movies that are labeled as comedies and then don't deliver. I think we all have different senses of humor.
Yeah, I think so. Because I guess I come from like the a George Carlin-esque sense of humor where I like looking at reality and like just putting on screen like, hey, this happens. It's funny, right?
And it's a good concept, and to me it's like this definitely is a good idea for a comedy movie. And I guess I just have a high bar for things that are meant to be funny and how consistently funny they are, because this movie did have many funny parts and it made me laugh. But it's really hard for me to like say a comedy movie is good if it didn't like have consistent laughs all the way throughout. So that's me. I'm pretty strict when it comes to things like that. Personally.
Hey, you love Ernest Saves Christmas. I can see your kind of comedy. A little bit of Screwball, little bit of Three Stooges.
And you know, joke density is, I think, a necessity when it comes to writing a comedy. If you're going to write a comedy and you've got like these great concepts, these great bits that are in it, that's great. But look over the movie several times and go, how long is this stretch gone without a funny part? And find some way to put funny parts in there. And I'm sure you have a similar concept when you write animation, that, you know, something interesting has to happen every so and so many minutes.
Yeah, because you really want to utilize that real estate. Like, you know, you only have so many frames you can pay a guy to animate. And yeah, like, whenever I'm writing scenes, I always think about what gag I can put in here, what, you know, running joke I can keep putting in. But I think you should always focus on your plot and your drama first, your main story beats, how your theme is going to execute, how your character arcs are going to land, and then figure out how to spruce it up with a little bit of funny.
Sure.
Yeah, when I
And that stands to reason, like, because not every show is primarily a comedy, so you need that foundation of your theme and your story to be the core part. But often with animation, you are mindful of those gags or some comedic element. Often, not always.
yeah, when I saw Look Back, I didn't initially pin it as a comedy straight away. It did have that really like, I almost found this. I don't know what word it is, but it really is just looking at humanity and just being. It's not parody. I don't know if it's satire either. It actually might be satire.
I think so. I think it's a bit of both. If I would describe it, it definitely has some parody elements, and it definitely has satire on the human race. Absolutely, like the way that you're looking at a government, a presidency that is just completely self-centered and thinking about the their own political longevity at the complete expense of human race. That's parody and satire because that's what goes on. We see it in pretty much every government on both sides of our border.
Don't Look Up, I believe, started production before Trump became president. I guess it might, because like when I did look into it, Don't Look Up wasn't supposed to just be a satire slash parody about global politics, American government, but actually the indifference of big institutions like government and media revolving around climate change. That it's like almost this slow, inevitable like disaster that's coming up. Like this meteorite's coming in 6 months. 6 months is a lot of time for these characters to launch a nuke at this big rock and blow it up and save humanity. But they don't end up doing that, which is a little bit of a subjection of expectations from other sci-fi movies, like I would say like Independence Day, aliens coming in to attack us or whatever like that, where we do have this heroic moment of the big, massive thing blowing up in the sky, like Star Wars. But yeah, we don't get this. It ends off on a pretty dour tone with Leonardo DiCaprio's final line.
But also a uniquely satisfying one in the sense that the completely self-centered president does get eaten by a dinosaur.
And a fairly comedic beat as well. Because yeah, it definitely was almost cartoonishly evil billionaire. Almost Elon Musk, Stockton Rush kind of amalgamation. Even a little bit of Steve Jobs, with because he's a phone billionaire as well. It is funny because both movies, we'll talk about the animation one you sent me as well, both movies deal with extinction level humanity events, Earth kind of being destroyed, and characters almost sacrificing their own species for money or personal gain. Which again it's a pretty big recurring element of a lot of sci-fi, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of puts into perspective the mass human problems that we see in the world come down to individual human problems, and how each of us are selfish, and that's why humanity acts in a selfish way in general. Brings up other questions about what is that all about?
Yeah, like this movie really does a really good job of just viewing humanity as both whole and singular individuals as well. Like I really love their montages of different places in the world during that ending scene when the asteroid was coming down. And I believe also at the beginning as well, they kind of have a montage of different people just doing life things.
They did do montages throughout, actually, at several points. They would show like all different snippets of life on Earth, like a salamander shedding its skin or a hummingbird drinking from a flower, and trying to show, which I think was actually a smart filmmaking decision, because they're not just saying humanity's going to end, but this planet is going to end. All the beautiful creation in the planet is going to end. So they try to bring that home by showing snippets of the beauty that's in the world.
It was a really good way of reinforcing, like getting us on the side of the scientists, being like, we wanted to save humanity, we wanted to save the Earth. But yeah, it's a really interesting term, because you have like these two guys that know it's going to end. They're trying their best to do everything, and like they run into those kind of hurdles that when you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, of course that would kind of happen. I wish it didn't. But yeah, that's the world we are currently in, where you have to go onto media circuits, you gotta go through the bureaucracy of government. And yeah, it's something that I haven't seen in other sci-fi and other films since Don't Look Up, which is why I find it unique in that way.
Yeah, again, it's a really good concept, and it definitely parallels the climate change drama that's played out around us, where it's pretty clear that temperatures are rising. There's obviously debate as far as how fast and what it's causing and all that, but it's clear that they're rising and that it's man-made. Not everyone believes that, so then there's gonna be conflict.
And as you also said earlier, this film does deal a lot with like the selfishness of humanity as well as the beauty of humanity as well. And I kind of liked how you had moments in this movie where we are dealing with just the interpersonal and like almost smaller life issues of both Kate and Randall. Like we had Randall dealing with like the infidelity of his own marriage, getting in with the TV host, and of course Kate dealing with the backlash of social media, and of course ending up with like the stranger part of this movie I always found. Timothy Chalamet's character, Yule, this like skateboarder kid that she ends up beating pretty much like late into the movie. But yeah, I thought it was just a really interesting addition to have, like, the world's about to end. It's the biggest problem ever, but we're still dealing with these tiny things as well. Like life is kind of still going on while it's happening, which when you look at other disaster films, you don't really see too much of. If anything, it's more like a side plot line. But yeah, almost like we kind of forget about the asteroid coming up to deal with just the smaller problems as well.
I do want to point out a few of the parts. I knock it on its comedy level, but there were a few parts that were really funny, like when they're going on the talk show at the first time, and they ask like the hosts, they do know why we're here, right? And then the handler just says, "Oh yeah, they know. Just remember to keep it light and fun." which was also kind of satire on talk television. All this stuff going on in the world, but we always have talk television that keeps it light and fun. And then also the racist astronaut, and of course not promoting racism, but parodying that there are people out there like this, and how ridiculous it is when he's saying, "I want to say hi to all the Indians, both kinds." Man, how cool would it be if you teamed up? Just completely oblivious. What parts do you remember being funny?
Ooh, that's a good question. I really loved what was it? I think it's the son of the president. What's it? Jason Orlean. I forgot the name of the.
Oh, Jonah Hill.
That's it. I just love that he was there, always carrying around this big like luxury bag with the nuclear codes in it, and just kind of just like just being the mama's boy to the president. And I found it really, really funny that in the end credit scene, he's the only survivor left on the planet. And he just pulls out his phone. It's like, last guy on Earth. We in this. Like and subscribe. That got me. Did you watch the end credit scene?
You know what? That's hilarious. I watched after, when they land. That was kind of like the first post credit scene, and she gets eaten. But I didn't watch past that after the full credits. So, wow, I missed something.
Well, you should go back. It's just a tiny funny bit to button off the movie.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to go back.
It was that, and like also that one rally scene. This is another scene where Jonah Hill's in there, but the Red Hatter don't look up people finally do end up looking up. They're like, oh, they lied to us, and they immediately turn. And again, Jonah Hill's character comes back in, and it's like, hey, got a text from my mom. Everyone chill out. It's all good.
Yeah. His character was pretty funny. I mean, constantly like being Gen Z relevant and in his lingo, and in this role of Secretary of State. Pretty good concept.
It's not a movie without its perks and its attempts to be funny. But yeah, I think its main strength is really taking that concept of an inevitable disaster and just making it, and just giving it a context to kind of live in. A physical danger, a present one. And yeah, just seeing what the characters do, trying to change that.
And it did have a few memorable lines, which I jotted down, which I thought were kind of these deeply philosophical lines. Again, when we're talking about kind of commentary on humanity, it actually hits some deep notes when Leonardo DiCaprio's character is talking with Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos' clone character.
I wrote it down here. So he's going to be Peter Isherwell.
Isherwell, that's
CEO
right.
CEO of the Bash company.
Yeah, Peter Isherwell, the billionaire phone company owner. And he says to Leonardo DiCaprio, who's wanting to get more out of him. Actually, I can't remember exactly what he was wanting, but what he says is, I know what you are, who you are. You are a lifestyle idealist. You think you're motivated by beliefs, high ethical beliefs, but you just run towards pleasure and away from pain. That's pretty deep. We all want to believe that we have high ethical beliefs, but how often is it that we're running towards pleasure and away from pain as kind of a primary determiner of our actions?
And yeah, I think that that line really solidifies that character as not necessarily the villain, but on a path to his own destruction. If we're looking at it as almost a villain defeat scene, we see that Randall has now taken the high ground. He's not going to deal with this BS anymore.
Yeah, I forget what what the previous part of that conversation was talking about, but he was kind of put in his place there, but they both had flaws.
It was interesting to see that because it's an older character and a younger character, the almost millennial and the Gen Z, that it was the older character, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, that ended up getting involved into social media, getting involved into the TV and almost celebrity status he got. And it was Kate's character that ended up becoming more cynical and ended up being more involved with real people. Almost the inverse of like the Gen Z stereotype of always being behind the screen, which I thought was also interesting as well as a little bit of satire commentary.
Yeah, there's definitely generational commentary going on.
It's a lot of different things this movie is tackling. And I think as a whole, you put it all together, it made for a really entertaining film. It definitely made you want to think after watching it.
Yes, that it did. Yeah.
I personally came away from the movie quite entertained. I think I gave it a solid 4.5 stars when I reviewed it on Letterboxd. And
I would give it a 3. Definitely has some solid aspects, but I'm a harsh assessor when it comes to comedy.
Yeah, no, totally. It definitely was. I did also look at just other general audience reactions, and it is a little bit polarizing, I will say. Some people see it as like a little bit hoity-toity, really in your face with its theme. Other people really like that. I would definitely recommend, make your own opinion, watch the movie if you really want to, because it's still a really good. I think it's really nicely cinematically shot, great uses of CGI.
It definitely had a budget for sure, which is interesting and impressive. Like they could get the star power right,
and the acting wasn't too bad either.
The performances were really good. Good pick.
Thank you, Titan AE.
Yes. I was really excited when I heard that you hadn't seen it because I thought, oh, now I get to show David Titan AE. It is a bit old. It's circa 2000.
So before I was born.
Turn of the century. And I think it probably does show its age. But what do you think?
I will say, right, this is a Gary Goldman, Don Bluth film, which are two big but kind of smaller members in the golden age of animation. They're most notably known for The Secret of Nim, and they also made the video game Dragon Slayer. They also made Anastasia, was my sister's big favorite film. But before I told my sister I was watching this film, and she actually is a little bit more of a bigger Don Bluth fan than I am because she loves Anastasia. And the first thing she told me is this movie flopped because of the CGI in this movie. And I was like, really?
So, and this was before you saw it?
This is before I saw it, right? I was telling my sister I was going to do it. And when I watched
That's too bad. That's too bad you had even a bit of, like, commentary before you watched it. But anyway.
Yeah, I know. It's a little unfortunate. But when I did watch it, it was, I will say, it was a little jarring. Not because of the fact that it was dated animation. In fact, I thought it was pretty solid for the time. Because Attack of the Clone Wars, Star Wars series, kind of used the same kind of form of animation for their series. And I did also grow up with stuff like, I think it's called Rebooted, which is a kid's show as well, that kind of had the same feel. And VeggieTales as well. And they were totally fine. It was just when it was conjoined with the 2D animation of the main cast, coupled all the different props, that it just felt so disjointed to me that I just couldn't really wrap my head around it. It just always took me out of it, especially because the Dredge, who are the main antagonists, are all CGI. That I almost felt like, and this is a really interesting comparison. There's stop motion animator, I think it was like Ray Harryhausen or something like that, who made a couple stop motion films that dealt with live action people. It felt like that watching a big claymation like troll fighting live action people. It was CGI, digital weird alien people fighting just like Iron Giant-esque 2D animated characters.
Yeah, it is jarring. That is true because there's not too many animated features where it blends hand drawn and CGI.
Because like the only time I know that actually does happen, there's Roger Rabbit that did the blending
Well,
of 2D.
but that was with live action and hand drawn.
Yeah, that was with live action, and I guess more recently there was the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers reboot movie that did 2D and 3D and a whole bunch of animation styles altogether, which is more fan service to animation as a genre. But yeah, this is the first movie I've seen that used such a blend of 2D and 3D together. Yeah, I can't say I didn't like it, but I also can't say I did like it. Like, I think it was a visually stellar movie, but it was just a little bit disjointed. And that fact would have been more excusable for me if I liked the plot a little bit more, which is kind of my other big hit with the movie.
Yeah, and that's upon rewatching it. I rewatched it in lead up to this, and I was like, okay, this isn't quite as memorable as I remember it being, because the story is it's just kind of basic. It doesn't really go in any huge new places. It's almost like it could have been an episode of an hour show or something.
Yeah. I will say, right, to give it a little bit of props, right, I think it had amazing potential as, like, humanity always endures kind of plot, because it is a story about a survivor from the destruction of Earth that ends up having the key to saving the rest of the species, but has since become a little bit more disillusioned with his own place in the universe and his own member of the species. Because, like, I found it really, really interesting that we join him, Cole, right? 15 years later, he's running with a whole bunch of aliens. And humans have kind of been treated as, like, second rate in terms of the universe and galaxy. Which is kind of funny to just be literally considered second nature to all of the universe. But, yeah. He does get that very classic story circle kind of arc, where he initially denies the call to adventure. We have Corso coming in, telling him he's destined for greatness. I did see when Akima showed up, knowing that this was a pre-2010s film. It's like, he's going to randomly fall in love with this character, even though there's nothing there. But all right, he looks good enough.
There was nothing there?
Yeah, it was a male lead and a female lead together on the same screen. It's like, oh, they're going to get together for some reason.
Well, what I heard when I did a bit more research on this is that when they did test screenings, they were initially going just for the male demographic, and they found out that this film was engaging high with the female demographic too. So then they added in more romance, and so that might have even been a kind of change midway through the movie. Titan AE 2000 science fiction action adventure film, also having quite a cast. Matt Damon, Bill Pullman, John Leguizamo, Nathan Lane, Janine Garofalo, and Drew Barrymore. So
definitely the very classic animation film with a bunch of celebrity voice actors. But I will say I didn't really recognize a lot of the voice cast. I think they did put in a little bit of voice as well when they did do their roles.
I mean, back in 2000, they would have sounded a bit different, but
oh, I guess fair enough.
pretty A-list at the time. They really pulled out the stops. This was supposed to be a boon for Fox, and it didn't quite turn out that way. But
in fact, I think it went as bad as it could have been, because the animation studio shut down months after this movie released. I think it also pretty much like ended. I guess I don't know if it was the reason why Don Bluth and Gary Goldman stopped making animated films, but it is their last credit, even though they're still kind of engaged with the animation community. I believe Don Bluth is doing online, not online, but like full-on animation course teachings as well. And he does still make the rounds at different conventions and stuff as meet and greets.
Yeah, when it comes to animation, maybe a big failure like that. Well, I was also late in their careers, I think, Don Bluth. Maybe we're nearing the end of their careers anyway, but it certainly spelled the end of Fox animation. But I also want to say, and this surprised me because I only learned about this in my research, not when I first watched the film. Screenplay by Ben Edlund, who I hadn't heard of, but also John August, who is of Big Fish fame, and also the Script Notes podcast, a competitor podcast, but definitely go and watch or listen to that podcast because it's probably the best screenwriting podcast out there. John and Craig, if you're listening, yes, we will be on your show if you want to interview two other competing screenwriting podcasters.
Emerging screenwriting podcasters. If you try to destroy, I guess, it'd be like picking on the little kid in school. But
and third writer, Joss Whedon of Avengers fame and many other TV credits like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and so forth. So kind of an A-list screenwriting team as well.
So yeah, I guess I am just a little bit more surprised that the plot didn't really pan out too much.
Yeah, it is kind of surprising. To me, this story, like, it does fit. Like I said, it could have been in an hour-long TV show. That's only because of the way that it, I think, turned out. I think the concept and the plot could definitely have fit in a movie format. It just needed some other elements. And now John August is definitely not going to have us on the podcast. But yeah, what those elements are, if 20th Century Fox asks to do a remake, I'm definitely there. I will fix those plot holes.
It wasn't necessarily plot holes that really did it for me. It just kind of felt like there were some scenes with character development that I'd love to see more with Cole. Because yeah, you have to really shake him up, I think, a little bit more. Because I think he really does flip at some point. I couldn't really pinpoint when. Probably when he got adopted, that he wanted to be more involved in the saving humanity. Akima already wanted to bring humanity back together, which I thought was really, really interesting because you do have this... it's a little bit of a nitpick with me, but I kind of don't like twist villains. I had that with the Frozen. I didn't really like Hans.
Did you see it coming, though?
That's the thing. I can kind of see it if I really rewatched the movie, but I really only saw that he was like a full twist villain when we randomly have Cole walking up during a meeting with the big dredge queen overlord between them and Corso. The only thing is, he does flip back, which is also kind of a nitpick with me. It's like, okay, you're good, now you're bad, now you're good again. It's like, you have to pick one. But I didn't like it that when Corso does go with the self-sacrifice route, we just don't pick up on that at all by the ending. Like, no one acknowledges that Corso self-sacrificed himself. We don't even get, like, a final, like, breath, like, he says something impactful. No, he gets electrocuted and that's it.
Definitely missed opportunities in the overall structure of the plot and character development, as you say.
And a little bit of world building as well, I think. Because we do have this kind of Star Wars-esque reality where we have all these different kind of species of aliens intermingling with each other. We have mining colonies and different commissaries where they're hanging out with, different planets where commerce is happening. I'd love to see that kind of, even a small type of way. Like Star Wars kind of did it in that sense, where we had like cities and it was almost like an immigration type thing. A cultural melting pot, if you will, almost like America. There's another thing I liked about this movie. It's the fact that we do have a little bit of a diverse cast. That we have the 3 humans plus 2 more aliens. Actually 3 aliens, right? It was like that Bat guy, the John Leguizamo goon character, and I think it's Stith, I believe her name is, the gunner. Those alien characters do kind of get pushed off a little bit as more like side characters, with the exception of Preet. It also is a twist villain in a way that I didn't really care about because he kind of gets off in about a matter of seconds.
You wanted to see just a little more of a wretched hive of scum and villainy.
A little bit, right? From a guy who comes from watching Disney that really focuses a lot on making their villains very, very intimidating, at least with their early animated films. I love designing villains, which is why I always pay attention to them when I'm watching movies, especially animation. Because I like knowing why they're doing things. I like having a presence. I like them being flawed, but having the potential to be redeemed. But yeah, they were almost Preet and Corso was kind of stock villains for me. Didn't really do too much. But yeah, I guess it just really comes down to how this film really dedicated its time with plot. We have this engine that they have, which is the map, the ring that Cole has. We know that they're trying to find the Titan AE, and we know that they want to rebuild humanity. Corso's big secret villainy thing is like he wants to find the Titan AE and use Cole for the fact of just destroying Titan AE so he can get paid by the Dredge. The way they go about doing it is both just going from planet to planet to planet. You know, you go here, oh, it's over there. We go here, they translate the thing, they go over here, they get captured by the Dredge again. It was just kind of just hopping between two places. Whereas something like Lord of the Rings that does that kind of same format, at each place they're going to, whenever they meet obstacles, we have a moment for character development, we have a little bit of a moment to breathe. And surprisingly, this is the kind of movie that had a little bit of non-stop action. It was kind of action beats followed by action beats.
And I think they were also depending on the unique CGI locations to fill in some of the other lacks, because it was a groundbreaking film in that respect, the CGI elements, even though it doesn't look like that today, and so it loses some of the impact. But back in the day, that was meant to kind of make your jaw drop a little bit with the set pieces visually.
Yeah, and like I don't blame them for doing that, right? Like if I ever like bought like a new Mustang from a car dealership, the first thing I'm doing is at least burning a little bit of rubber off the wheels. So I'm fine with them showing that ice planet scene with all the reflecting mirrors and the giant crashing ice things together when the new planet got formed.
Or the hydrogen planet where there's those gigantic bubbles of hydrogen that grow up in these trees, and they have to avoid them or they cause explosions.
That's a little other nitpick I had is with their action scenes. I do remember that course we had in our film school with Sarah Cooper, where it's like our characters are placed in a place and they kind of have to use their ingenuity to find like a really cool way out of their situation. But when it came to the hydrogen tree fight, it was mostly just run and gun. They weren't really doing anything cool with the hydrogen tree format. I think at one point, like Akima shot a dredge ship that crashed into a hydrogen tree, but I don't think they ever like blew up a hydrogen tree in order to take out a bunch of dredge or anything like that, or they dived under the water to hide from them.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit boring in that.
Yeah, and it highlights the fact that even if you know that it's going to be visually impressive, you still need to have your story structure down, or else it's not going to hit as good as it can hit.
Funnily enough, my favorite action scene in that whole movie was actually the first battle in the cantina, because they kind of did something really cool with the zero gravity effect, and they set up that this cafe is powered by a zero gravity artificial gravity machine. And so they were doing that, and they ended up escaping through vents and blowing the dredge up with fire barrels and escaping in a stolen, I guess, mining pod or whatever. So that was definitely my favorite scene. Oh, and the fact that they also had to break out and exhale their breath before going off into space to get onto the ship.
That was a really good scene, yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazingly done sequence. And I kind of wish the rest of the movie like had that action-y feel to it, where you're using the environment instead of the environment using you.
Or the scene when he's on his little speeder pod in the lineup to after work, and he's like, I don't want to wait for this. I'm just gonna, go where the ship's docked to take a shortcut. There's not gonna be a ship docking exactly right now. And then of course there is, and then you feel the juxtaposition of the super small to the super big. That's a little bit of world building and making you feel the context.
Like I said, I didn't like the CGI and the fact it was bad. It just felt so disjointed with the 2D, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. But if you really looked at it objectively, it's incredibly good CGI for its time.
I was gonna say one other thing that I've always not appreciated or thought they could have done better was the music. It was cool in that they kind of wanted to do a kind of rock alternative kind of soundtrack. That part was cool, but they didn't spend any money on that aspect because the songs that they chose were either completely unknown or they maybe composed them, like got kind of B-list bands to or C-list bands to compose songs for this film. And to me, it was a missed opportunity because music can really connect with people and make it a memorable film and kind of fill in some of the gaps that are present in a film if you pick good music soundtrack. But they're not memorable. They're kind of forgettable.
Because yeah, I will say, right, going back to the genre of sci-fi, there are a couple notable, I think, movies that did have like very contemporary like rock songs or stuff they'd play on the radio during like scenes where we're just panning across the endless expanse of the galaxy. Like my mind kind of goes to Das Book Zarathustra, and I'm thinking about the Voyager 1, the probe we kind of like launched into space, and it had the golden record, and loaded onto it were a couple of songs from the planet Earth, including
Oh, Johnny Be Good.
That's it.
I knew the Golden Record had bits of human culture, and I think it had some classical music. I didn't know it had Johnny Be Good.
Yeah, but like I like the idea behind using almost Y2K music in this movie because it is a movie about building a new Earth, putting the culture back onto it. Which again, I hate having to say bad things about this movie because I really did think it had great potential. But almost this theme about finding a new identity, building a new home for Earth, I think we miss out a lot of time to develop human culture. Because I think we only had like really like one scene, like one beat where Akima, who is not even our protagonist of this movie, talks to a bunch of refugees on like a new Bangkok space station. And so she has all these interactions with different characters that had connections back home, and they had lives, and they had memories. And we don't spend any time at all developing that. Like, you know, we're developing a new planet, but like, why? I just wish this movie did more with that concept. But yeah, that being said, because the music was from Y2K, and music is such a well connected part of human culture, I like that they did try doing not like big orchestral sci-fi music for this. That they tried doing, you know, stuff you'd listen to at home.
Yeah, exactly.
If only it was better, right?
It succeeds, but only, you know, minimally in that regard.
I can't fault this movie for trying. I can't fault it for trying. Because, yeah, like we said, like this has great potential to be something really good.
Yeah, it just goes to show how hard it is to write a solid movie.
That being said, though, I don't want to call this movie completely bad. In fact, I think I only rated it 2.5 stars on it Letterboxd, which actually might be the lowest rated movie I've had on this podcast, unfortunately. I do like watching movies that do end up getting produced, and they do get panned by critics, and still be like, it still got produced, there's still enough people that collaborate together to make this a reality, especially in animation, which does make me a little bit sad that there are hundreds upon hundreds of people that had to work on an animated film, and it does get this kind of reception. But it still goes to show that, you know, you could still be really passionate about a project and just still go out and execute it, still go out and release it to crowds, instead of being, you know, a tax write-off for a production company.
And it can still be beloved by certain people. It obviously from a corporate perspective, it's viewed as a failure, and you kind of have to have the corporate perspective if there's going to be movies that take that much effort to make. It has to be a corporate endeavor, and so you have to kind of continually be up to snuff. But it was always a favorite in my mind when it comes to sci-fi animation. But I would only give it a 3.5, I think. But it's got a lot of nostalgia for me.
And I think a lot of Don Bluth and Gary Goldman films kind of have that cult classic feel to them. They're notable names in animation, but their movies can be a little bit panned. But yeah, if you like that kind of thing, if you really like niche films, I think you should definitely give Titan AE a shot. If you're a big fan of animation history, I think you should also see the very baby steps of CGI animation and 2D combined together. But yeah, overall, it's alright. Just wished it did more.
All right. That, I think, brings us to the end of episode 13.
Yeah, the end of the sci-fi episode.
Tune in next time for more.
I think we should do, we were talking about it earlier, the next episode might even be comedy.
That's right.
Which is actually my favorite kind of genre of film.
It just might be comedy. If that's your thing, then maybe tune in next time on the Jay and Dave Went to Film School podcast.
Thank you for listening.
Signing off.
And that's a wrap. Special thanks to Niranj, who made the intro and outro music for this podcast. You can find him on Instagram at his handle @NiranjD. That is at NIRANJD on Instagram.